On this podcast, we have Kunal Bhaskaran from Slipstream Performance talking chains and sprockets. Hi, Kunal. Such a pleasure to have you on this Motor Asha podcast. Our topic is a very technical one, and it's chains and sprockets. And what better than to have someone like you, who's had a fair share of changing these at Slipstream Performance. Welcome. Firstly,
Ravi, thank you for having me on the Modo Asha podcast. I'm sure this is going to be a value add for all the guys listening into this podcast. It's going to be interesting because the motorcycle drive chain is a pretty simple component, but at the same time it's overlooked and misunderstood many a time. So yeah, let's go ahead and you can ask the question and I'll go ahead and answer them as best I can.
so we're gonna get straight into it. What makes a good chain?
Okay, so to answer that question, the chain we use on our motorcycles, or more specifically, it's called the bush roller chain. It's been around for, I think, upwards of a century, and the basic design hasn't really changed. But what has changed is the materials that they use, and how the lubrication is sealed within the rollers of the chain. So this improves service life of the chain. I think as a motorcyclist, I would say the quality of the chain you use on your motorcycle is of paramount importance. This means getting a chain that has been designed for your particular application, and at the same time it uses the best material possible, while keeping the chain, affordable. I mean, you could use the best materials out there, but then it might become really expensive. So you need to look at a chain that is affordable, but at the same time, does the job. And to keep it simple without getting too technical, you look for a chain basically from a reputable manufacturer. This will ensure you get a chain with high tensile strength. Also important would be the fatigue strength of the chain. And also that on today's motorcycles, all motorcycles chains come with an O-ring. Even better is if you could install a chain with an X-ring. So the O-rings or the X-ring is basically there to keep the lubrication in and the dirt out of the rollers.
We see a 520, a 525, or a 530 pitch on chains. What is a chain pitch, and does it really make a difference if someone is changing that on his motorcycle?
So yeah, that's a pretty interesting question again, and I think it's good that we're going to be covering this here. It's a little technical, and I'm going to answer it in two parts. So first I'm going to talk about the chain pitch. So chains come in a lot of different sizes. And chain pitch is basically the difference from difference in distance from one roller pin center to the next roller pin center. And different size chains can have different pitches, but different size chains can also have the same pitch. This can be a little confusing, but for example, the common chains that we use on the mid to large capacity motorcycles, the 520, 525 and 530 size chains, they all actually have the same pitch. So even though a 520 chain is going to be smaller and lighter than for example a 530 chain, and you must keep in mind that none of these chains can be interchanged. Even though they have the same pitch, you cannot interchange say a 520, 525 and 530 chains, for example. And the reason is that the size difference between these chains is actually with the width of the inner roller. So a 535 chain is going to be wider and heavier than say a 525 or 520 chain. So keep this in mind when you're thinking about chain pitch. Even though we hear about this a lot, it's not just the chain pitch, it's also the width of the inner roller that actually makes or could change the size of your chain. And okay, now we move on to the second part of the question, and this is actually it's what I really enjoy, like talking about go faster bits. Everybody wants to improve the performance of their bike. But if you ask me, in respect to the drive chain, if you ask me what is the best way to improve the performance of your ride, I would say the best way is to just keep your bike stock, the chain stock. And if you keep your stock chain clean, lubricated, and correctly adjusted, it's going to be the best bet, because generally the manufacturer, recommended size will be the best bet for anyone looking at, a balance between performance and chain life. And this is going to be for most riders out there. Of course, downsizing, from say 530 to 525 chain is something that we do hear about on the forums quite a bit. And yes, doing this would reduce the overall weight of the chain, thereby reducing, the rotational mass of the final drive and also cutting down on friction. But you got to remember, guys, the optimum chain size is the chain with the smallest pitch that can meet the torque and power requirements of your motorcycle. So, a smaller than recommended chain is going to stretch and wear out faster. So, for a bike that you're going to be touring around or using for regular use, it's not really the best option. So, unless you're out racing, I personally don't see the advantage of shifting, or downsizing from the recommended OEM size to a smaller chain.
We get a lot of customers asking us about sprocket ratios and should they go one to up or one to down as compared to their stock. What is the right way to do it?
Yeah, so this was something that I used to get asked quite often till maybe like a decade ago. So a guy would walk into the workshop wanting to change his sprocket ratios. It always seemed like the easiest way to get your bike to go faster. Like, damn it, man, I Googled it, I made the calculations, it's going to be way faster. But like with everything performance related, every change you make may improve one area and it's definitely going to impact another. In respect to sprocket ratios, you can either, gear up or gear down. Gearing up would technically increase the top end, but it's going to, reduce acceleration, and gearing down, will give you faster acceleration and bottom end, but it's going to reduce your top end. So it all boils down to application and, what you're trying to achieve in the first place. It's not so much about, changing your sprocket ratios. It's more about, looking at it from the angle of, where do I want this motorcycle build to go, or what am I trying to achieve here? So, let me explain using some real world scenarios. This is stuff that, just a couple of them that, maybe we've all kind of experienced. So say, for example, you own a heavy adventure bike and, you ride the trails often. Maybe you're a slow rider, like they say, everything gets sorted out when you start going faster. Like, if you can't go over the obstacle, oh man, you're going too slow. So yeah, you say, for example, you're going over an obstacle and you find, the first and second gear, for example, is too tall for the terrain, and the speed you're riding at, maybe you want to ride a little slower because you're not so confident over the bigger obstacles or the bumps or, whatever you're going over. So yeah, maybe in that case, gearing down a little by installing, say, a slightly larger front sprocket, may help your trail riding a little bit. And it's probably not going to sacrifice much of, say, a top end when you're out on the highway. Or, if you use another example, like this has happened to me, while you're maybe, riding a smaller capacity motorcycle, say, for example, in the mountains, in the Himalayas. Okay, say you're out there, your bike's probably pretty loaded, you're up at altitude. In this scenario, you might also benefit from, say, a larger front sprocket. It's going to improve again your bottom end. So, the bike revs a little better at altitude. Yeah, so see, these are some of the real, world examples where if you know what you want, customizing, your sprocket ratios is going to help. And when you're talking about gearing up, that's a bit more complicated because, in most cases, especially with a bone stock engine, I think you would see no real benefit, and it might actually hamper your performance. So I'm not really going to get into talking about calculating sprocket ratios, as a too many calculations that you can do, too many permutations and combinations with, okay, what is a good sprocket, and there are a lot of calculators available online. You just put in what sprocket, front sprocket you're going to use and what rear sprocket, and it'll tell you the ratio. But to put it simply, the right way to customize your final drive ratio is to basically understand your end goal. Like with any other performance modification, what exactly you want to achieve, and then start with making small changes. Sprocket ratio changes, like one easy tip I can give you is, the rule of thumb for changing sprockets is, if you change, the front sprocket by one tooth, it's like approximately has the same effect as changing 3 or 4 teeth on the rear sprocket. So yeah, to reiterate that, the correct way to do this would be to make small changes and also know, what you want your end goal to be.
This is an interesting question for you, Kunal. How many kilometers ideally should a chain sprocket last?
This is an easy one to answer. I mean, come on, you know about this, man. But you just wait till the chain basically falls off the rear sprocket, and then you're good to go. It's time to change the chain and sprockets. Okay, so to get a little serious, like until recently, chain awareness, that's the term I coined and I use. It was pretty much non-existent, almost like, motorcyclists in this country, believe that the motorcycle rear wheel was propelled by an invisible force or something. That's the amount of time or, effort they took to kind of get down and check their chain, and sprockets. Thankfully, with more riders wanting to understand their motorcycle and kind of getting more hands-on, this has changed to a large extent, I find. Eventually, though, your drive chain and sprockets are going to wear out due to the abuse they go through. That's just the part of riding a motorcycle with a drive chain. The chain is open to the elements, and it is generally poorly lubricated. So the easiest method to know, apart from the first one where you just wait for the chain to kind of fall off your sprockets, guys, don't do that. The easiest method is actually something we call the chain pull-off method. And all you have to do is try to pull the chain off the rear sprocket at roughly the 3 o'clock position. You don't need any tools to do this. You can just put your bike on the side stand, and if you pull back on the chain, and if you see more than half the sprocket tooth exposed, then your chain and sprockets need a replacement. And guys, always remember, no cheating. You need to change your chain and sprockets together as a set. There are no shortcuts here. You can't be like, but you know what, I'm going to just maybe change the chain right now, and after 3,000 kilometers, I'm going to change the sprockets. It's just going to be a waste of time. So yeah, your new chain is going to be toast because the old sprockets are worn out from the previous chain. So when you're doing this, guys, please change your chain and sprockets together as a set.
So, what are the ways that someone can ensure maximum chain drive performance?
Yeah, so we all know the answer to this one. You just basically oil the shit out of your rear chain, and that's going to give you maximum, chain performance. Your rear drive chain and sprockets is going to be like, oof, butter smooth. Well, actually, that's not the case. It's basically 3 things you need to do to make sure that your, drive chain and sprockets, or the final drive as you call it, is clean. You got to clean it, you got to lubricate it, and you got to make sure that it's adjusted correctly. So remember the chain awareness bit. If you want your drive chain to last and give you the correct performance the way it's designed, step 1 is to basically get down on your knees and have a look at the chain. Yeah. And it is a mechanical part, and like any other moving part on your motorcycle, it's got to be kept clean and lubricated. of course, this is very difficult, I know, with conditions in our country, and the chain runs out in the open. It's exposed to elements, and yeah, and I mean, I got a simple solution to all this. Unless you got the money to buy a motorcycle with, a shaft drive, that's the solution, guys. Buy an expensive motorcycle, one with a shaft drive, and wait for that to break eventually. Or you're going to have to cultivate a relationship with your chain. That means getting down there and having a look at it. Thankfully, the engineers that designed the motorcycle chain finally realized that the weak point, in the chain is actually keeping the lubrication in and, most of the road gunk out. So that's when they actually, around the 70s, they decided to put O-rings into your rear chain. So this would protect the bushes from wearing out prematurely due to the lubrication escaping and the dirt getting in. And of course, with modern motorcycle chains, we have two types of O-ring chains available. One is, chain with the basic O-ring in them. And the better chain or the better design is a chain with an X-ring. And this is even better at doing all this while reducing the friction that just an O-ring would cause. The only thing is you need to be careful because O-ring and X-ring chains, they need to be lubricated with a product that is compatible with O-rings. So it's not like you just go out there like a lot of people say, and I'm going to use WD-40 for example. There's nothing wrong with WD-40. It's a super product, but it might not be the best choice for your chain just because it's cheap and and it is a lubricant. You want something that's O-ring compatible that also repels dirt from sticking to the chain, and at the same time, when your chain is spinning, you don't want all the lubrication that's on your chain getting flung off. So yeah, after you clean and lubricate your chain, the third thing you need to do is basically go through your workshop manual or have a look at your rear swing arm, and it'll give you tell you how you need to adjust the rear chain slack. And in my opinion, this might be different from from other people or other recommendations, but in my opinion, in Indian conditions, I think your drive chain should be cleaned and lubricated. And yeah, this is a bit of a pain in the ass about every 450 kilometers. Yeah, I know it sucks, guys, but I told you the alternative. Go get a shaft drive bike. And for lazy people, or the guys like me who've been riding for a while and you just don't want to be bothered with having to lubricate your chain so often, there is another option, and this is actually being tested, and they find it to be more effective than the chain lubes that you get out of a can. It's the chain drip oiler, and a very good example is the Scott oiler. So yeah, if you just want to kind of reduce the work that goes into maintaining your rear drive chain, I would suggest you get a Scott oiler. They work really, really well. You will of course have to clean your chain frequently as well. Might not be as often as before, and you will of course have to still adjust your chain when it's required.
That brings me to my last question. What is a motorcycle chain master link? What does it do? And do I need to know the kind of clip type or rivet type? And is it important to my motorcycle?
Yeah, so if you're going to be somebody who's going to be replacing his chain sprocket kit with maybe an aftermarket kit, this is something that would be valuable to know. Yeah, so just like selecting the correct drive chain, you also need to select the correct type of master link. It's a very important aspect when replacing a chain. Of course, like I said earlier, if you go ahead and buy the OEM chain, or if you buy a kit that's available for your motorcycle, it's probably going to be supplied with the correct master link, and you don't really need to bother about all this information. But if you are somebody who is maybe buying a loose chain and loose sprockets. This is good information to understand. Yeah, so generally for smaller capacity bikes, like for the DID chains, you can use the RJ clip type master link. These are pretty similar to what you used to have on the older Royal Enfields. Of course, this link from DID does not come with O-rings. This is a non-O-ring type master link, and it also has a safety clip, and you don't need any special tools to install this master link. You can push it on with your hand and push the side plate on with your hand as well, and with a pair of pliers you can slide the safety clip on. Of course, it being so easy to put the side plate on and the safety clip on, it also makes it not safe to use for larger capacity motorcycles, because the chain or drive chain does have a tendency to twist, and that twisting action could actually have the side plate and the clip come off, and then that could be catastrophic for somebody riding his motorcycle fast. And I mean, at best you could have your chain fall off in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, so and this pretty much used to happen quite often with safety clip type master links. So moving on from the RJ type of clip, I'm going to talk about the FJ clip. Of course, guys, these designations are for the DID chains. They might be different for different manufacturers, but the principle remains the same. The FJ master link basically comes with a side plate that needs to be pressed on, so you do need a special tool. This makes it safer than the RJ, and you can use it up to 1200cc motorcycles, I believe. Of course, this would not be for something like a Hayabusa or a super sport. This would be for maybe a 1200cc motorcycle that's kind of like a classic or vintage design. Okay, so moving on from there, of course, another difference between the RJ, the FJ and the ZJ is that the RJ is not an O-ring link, but the FJ comes with O-rings. So you can't use the FJ link on a non O-ring chain, because there would be a difference in the overall width of the link. And now moving on to the ZJ, this is my master link of choice. I try to use this as much as possible. It's the safest for most mid-size and large displacement motorcycles, and they generally come with this fitted OEM. It's a rivet type link with no safety clip. So you do need, again, a special tool to push the side plate on, and then you need to complete the process by riveting the link and staking the rivet head. So what happens is now it's almost as good as a chain, an endless chain that's that's been riveted at the factory. It's very, very strong, and it generally the rivet, if the rivet head dimensions or the stake is correct, it will generally not part. The chain is not going to part. You can fit a rivet type master link to, for example, a smaller displacement motorcycle, but you can never put a clip style master link on a large capacity motorcycle which has the rivet type link from the OEM. This if you do this, your chain could basically fail. And as a rule of thumb, just stick to whatever type of master link was originally supplied with your motorcycle. So again, using the correct chain that's built for your application is very important. And with links, you need to look at the CC of your motorcycle. Don't use the wrong link for the wrong motorcycle. That could end up either damaging you or damaging your motorcycle or injuring you. So yeah, just make sure that whatever literature you're going through, what link you need to use on your particular motorcycle.
Thanks so much, Kunal, for all this information. There's so much of education in it, and it helps people understand the fact that chains and sprockets are just not about learning them till they fall off.
So yeah, Abir, it's been my pleasure to do the podcast, and I really enjoyed it. And I hope going forward we are able to do a few more together.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. I want to hear your stories, your motorcycle experiences, what you've been doing, and how motorcycles have made your life better. So if you have something to say, DM us on Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to get you on this podcast.